So on this class opener, we're reviewing inequalities, solving inequalities, and single variable. It's just x. There is no y. So they want us to solve this to get x by itself. And then after we get that answer, we want to graph it on a number line. Okay. So x is the movie star. You want to get it by itself. So adding 2 is the correct first step. So you're going to go plus 2 here and plus 2 over here. You're going to rewrite your inequality. It's a negative 3x is less than or equal to 12. For my final step, what do I do? What do we do for the final step? Right here it says divide by negative 3. That's right. It says negative 3 times x. So to get rid of the multiplication of negative 3, you're going to divide by negative 3. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Now, I hope you guys remember from the section on inequalities that if you multiply or divide by a negative on your last step, what do you do with the inequality? You switch it. So the less than or equal to became greater than or equal to. Okay, so this is our answer. X is greater than or equal to negative 4. Now, Donaldo, we need to represent that answer on a number line. So the trick to do that is you put the number you're talking about in the middle and then fill in the extra spaces or extra values. So going this way, you have to get to 0 at some point. So this is going to be negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, and so on and so on. This way would be negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8. Okay, so the question is this. Do I put a solid dot right here at negative 4 or an open dot? Solid. How do you know it's a solid dot? Because there's a solid line underneath it. So it will be a solid dot at negative 4. Fill it in. And we should remember that when you have a greater than symbol, is that to the left or to the right? Greater than is to the right. Remember?
Oh, right.
To the right.
To the right.
Less than is to the left. Greater than is to the right. So you have to draw your arrow going to the right. That's great. I said great instead of right. So again, just to review, guys, if I said x is less than 1, well, that would be on a number line. You would have a 1 right here, a 2, a 3, a 0, a negative 1. Where would less than go? To the left or to the right?
Less than to the left.
Less to the left, right? Starts with the L, so it's to the left. Greater than is to the right. So if I wanted to graph x is less than 1, that would be an open dot because it doesn't have a solid line underneath it. And it is to the left. So that's just a little review of what we did a long time ago that we're going to need to apply on today's lesson. So let's move on to today's handout, which has class opener part 2. So right here, you want to get y by itself. What's your first step to get this y value by itself? Okay, that's to find x and y intercepts, which you could do, but I want you to practice using y equals mx plus b. So I want you to get y by itself. Subtract 3x, right? So we are going to subtract 3x from the left side of the equal sign, subtract 3x from the right side of the equal sign, and I can't really subtract the 6 take away 3x, so I'm just going to rewrite it. I'm going to rewrite the whole thing. It's going to say negative 2y is equal to, instead of 6 minus 3x, I want to put negative 3x with a positive 6. That way it looks like y equals mx plus b. Well, at least it almost does, because I still need to do one more thing. I need to get rid of that negative 2 that's being multiplied by y. So to get rid of the multiplication, you're going to do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing by that negative 2 value. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side, which means every term on the other side. Divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. So you will have y equals, negative divided by negative is a positive, and you cannot divide 3 by 2. It would be a decimal, so let's leave it like a fraction, because we want a fraction there anyway, rise over run. And we do have a minus 3 over here as our b value. Again, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So knowing y equals mx plus b, you know where your line is going to cross the y-axis, which crosses at negative 3. So go to the y-axis, go to negative 3 and put a dot there. And from that dot, from the negative 3, you're going to rise and run according to your slope. And here it is. The rise is 3. The run is 2. Because it's positive, you're going to be going up 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then over 2, 1, 2. And you put a dot right there. So we have those 2 dots. Connect the dots with the line. Put some arrows on it. And you have graphed the line. Easy, right? This is a review. We should be good at this. So we absolutely need to be able to graph using y equals mx plus b. I hope everybody's good with that. Let's move on to the next question on this part 2 of the class opener. It says graph the inequality x. What does it say right here? X is what? Greater than 2. So everybody put a 2 somewhere in the middle. Fill in some values to the right and to the left. So this is growing this way, 4, 5. It's getting smaller this way, 0, -1. Now, you have to ask yourself, is this going to be an open dot or a solid dot? Open dot. Now remember, if it has a solid line underneath it, it will be a solid dot. If it has an or equal to, that means you could include it. But if it doesn't have the or equal to, it's going to be an open dot. Let me explain what that means. So you put an open dot at 2, and then x is greater than 2. Greater than is to the right. So that's how you graph an inequality. It's this simple. X is just any number. It's saying, tell me a number that's greater than 2. Oh, well, it could be 3, could be 4, could be 5, it could be 10, bless you. It could be 2.5, it could be 2.01, it could be 2.00001, but it cannot be 2. That's why this is an open dot. It cannot be 2 because 2 is not greater than 2. 2 is equal to 2. So if it had an or equal to sign, then it would be a solid dot. You would be able to include it. But because it does not have a solid line, it's not a solid dot. It's an open dot. So keep this in mind. If there's a solid line underneath it, it'll be a solid dot. If there's no solid line underneath it, it cannot be a solid dot. It has to be open. That's something we already knew that you should know and that you're going to have to apply on today's lesson. Let's compare that with this next one. What does this say right here? X is what? Less than or equal to 3. So you have a 3 right there. You have a 4, a 5, a 6. You have a 2, a 1, a 0, -1. Open dot or closed dot at closed. So you make that thing, fill it in, make sure it's a solid dot. Now it does say x is less than 3. Less than is to the left or to the right? To the left. Less than is to the left, greater than is to the right. So these are the skills that we need to know to be able to graph linear equalities on an XY plane. So here are the notes, 5.6. Graphing linear inequalities is the same exact thing as graphing a linear equation. It's just a couple extra steps. So instead of reading through all these steps, let's read one step and then apply that one step on the first example below. So step 1 says rewrite the inequality in slope-intercept form. So let's go down here to our first example. Is this in slope-intercept form? No. So I need to rewrite it in slope-intercept form. What's slope-intercept form? Y equals mx plus b. So what do I do first to get it in slope-intercept form? Yeah, get rid of the 3x, right? So take away 3x. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. Take away 3x. Rewrite your inequality. Negative 2y is greater than, you can't really do 6 take away 3x, so you're going to rewrite it. Negative 3x plus 6. What would your final step be to get it in slope-intercept form? Divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. Now, this is an inequality. And when you divide by a negative, what must you do?
You need to switch it.
You need to switch the inequality symbol. So, yes, the negative 2 cancel, and you have y, but you have to flip that inequality symbol. You have to change it. And the 3 over 2 stays 3 over 2, but the negative divided by a negative becomes a positive, so it's 3 over 2x. And the 6 divided by negative 2, that's a minus 3. And for the sake of using different colors here, I want to put my slope in blue, rise 3, run 2, and my y-intercept in red, minus 3. That's y equals mx plus b. Your m is here, your b is there. And now, that was step 1. Now we can move on to step 2. What does step 2 say? It says, graph it, but determine if it's a solid line or a dotted line. Kind of the way you determine if it was a solid dot or an open dot. If it has a solid line underneath it, it will be a solid line. If it doesn't have a solid line underneath it, it's going to be a dotted line. Does that make sense? It's really simple. Just like before with the dots. If there's a solid line, it will be solid. If it doesn't have a solid line, it's not going to be solid. It's going to be a dotted line. So let's do that. Let's graph. So this one's going to be dotted. Exactly. Perfect. So it's going to be dotted, so let's graph it. You start with the b value of -3, so let's go to -3. Here it is. That's the y-intercept value. Now from this point, I'm going to rise and run according to my slope. So I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 2, 1, 2, and put a dot right here. Now we just said that this is not going to be a solid line because it does not have a solid line underneath it. So I must do a dotted line. Let me do a dashed line right here. Just put a bunch of dots and you're good. Now that was step 2. Now step 3 is shading in where all of your answers are at. Okay? You see, on an inequality, like let's go back to the part 2 class opener. When I said x is less than or equal to 3, it's a whole area of numbers. So when you're dealing with inequalities, you're talking about an area of answers. So right here we have our line, but we need to determine if the answers are up here, which we would have to shade in, or down here, which we would have to shade in. Let's read step 3 on our steps above. It says, decide what side of the line to shade by testing any point that's not on the line. 0, 0 is the best choice if it's not on the line. Okay, so let me explain. Your answers are either going to be up here or down here. Either one side or the other. Okay, so how about this? If I were to pick, let's say the coordinate, give me a coordinate, any coordinate, guys.
4, 3.
4, 3. Okay, so if I go to 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, up, 1, 2, 3. Well, that's not that good of a point. Why is 4, 3 not a good point? Because it looks like it's pretty much on the line, right? You want a point that's not on the line, somewhere up here or somewhere down here.
4, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, you're saying 2, 3. I'll go with 2, 3 this time. 2, 1, 2, 3, right here, yeah?
Yeah.
So if I test the point 2, 3, how do I test points? I plug them in, right? So my x is 2, my y is 3. Now if I plug in a 2 right here and a 3 over here, let me show you what it's going to say. It's going to say, instead of y, it's going to say 3 is less than, and then we have that slope, 3 over 2. But instead of x, what am I going to put? 2. So you're going to multiply by 2 and then take away 3, the b value, take away 3. We're just testing it. We're plugging it in to see if it works. So when I do plug it in, when I do plug in a 2 right here and a 3 right there into the x and to the y, I end up with the 2's canceling out, and I end up with 3 take away 3, and that should be greater than 3. So when I rewrite this thing, I have 3 on this side is less than 3 take away 3 is 0. What do you guys say about this? 3 is less than 0. What do you say about that? 3 is less than 0. That's wrong. That's not true. So we just tested a point, and it gave us something false. That means it's not true. That means it's not an answer, right? So this guy right here did not work. No, it didn't work. So it's not an answer. So where must your answers be at if it's not up here on this side? It must be on the other side. Okay? So any point down here will work. So for example, if I were to pick a point like 2, negative 3. If I pick that point, 2, comma, negative 3. If I plug in a 2 for x and a negative 3 for y, it will work. Okay? Now, you might be thinking, man, this is a lot of math, which it is. There's an easy point that you could pick. Instead of picking random points like 2, 3 or 2, negative 3, what's the easiest point to pick?
0, 0.
0, 0. Right? So if you test 0, 0, 0 for x, 0 for y, I already know it's not going to work. Why? Because I tested this one up here and it didn't work. That means that none of these guys are going to work. All of these are going to work. So if you did test 0, 0, think about it. 0 for x right here and 0 for y right here. So you really would have 0 is less than 0 minus 3. You would have 0 is less than negative 3. Think about that, guys. Is 0 less than negative 3? No, 0 is greater than any negative number. So right there, you know that even 0, 0 does not work. So where does it work? Any point on the other side, so you shade in this side. And that's how to graph an inequality. Once again, what do? Step 1, rewrite it in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Step 2, decide if it's a solid line or a dotted line. If it does have a solid line underneath it, it will be a solid line. If it doesn't have a solid line underneath it, it's not going to be a solid line. And step 3 is to decide where your answers are at. They're either going to be on one side of the line or the other side of the line. So let's do this one. Let's do it rather quickly. Step 1 is to get it in slope-intercept form. What do I do to get it in slope-intercept form? What do I do? I need to get the y by itself. What do I do? How do I get rid of the multiplication of negative 3? Divide by negative 3. Now, what number is in front of x? A 1. So divide by negative 3. And the 9, you divide by negative 3. So you divide everything by negative 3. Your new slope-intercept form inequality will be y is greater than or equal to, you flip it because you're dividing by a negative. You have 1 over negative 3, but you should put the negative out in the front instead of the denominator. There's an x right next to it. And then think about this. A negative 9 divided by a negative 3, what is that? That's a positive 3. Now, again, let me put my slope in blue and my y-intercept, my b value in red. So this does cross the y-axis at 3. Put a dot right there. Is this going up or down according to this slope? It's going down because it's negative. So I'm going to go down 1 over 1, 2, 3 and put a dot right there. I want to connect my dots and I have my line. But is it going to be a solid line or a dotted line? Solid. Why? Because it has a solid line underneath it, right? Over here, you did not have a solid line underneath it. So we ended up with a dotted line. But over here, you do have a solid line underneath it, so it's going to be a solid line. Okay, so let's do that solid line right there. Put some arrows on it. And now the third and final step is shading in. You either need to shade in one side or the other. Test a point. We are going to end up shading up, but I don't want to give you the shortcut yet. I want you to test the value 0, 0. So here's 0, 0. If it works, if this works, then it is an answer. That means that all your answers are down here. If it doesn't work, that means that your answers are going to be up here. So you always want to shade in where your answers are at. So think about this. If you were to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y, and you have zeros right here instead of x and y, what's it going to say? It's going to say 0 is greater than or equal to 0. Negative 1/3 times 0, it's going to be 0 plus 3 is going to be 3. So is this a true statement or false statement? 0 is greater than 3.
No.
That's false. So what do you know about this? Did it work or did it not work? Did not work. So where are your answers going to be at if it didn't work on this side? On the other side, on the top. That's right. So shade in the top. And what this means is that any coordinate up here will work on the inequality. Any coordinate down here will not work. And that's how you graph. There's an extra long lesson, I apologize, but I might as well jump to a couple of examples that you're going to be doing on the homework. Check it out. Here we go. Let's look at number 10 here. You're going to be graphing these inequalities. Again, step 1 is to get y by itself. So what are you going to do to get y by itself right here on number 10? You want to get rid of that minus x. How do you get rid of a minus x? Plus x. Thank you. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Plus x. You have y is greater than. You don't flip the inequality symbol because you didn't multiply or divide by a negative. You are going to rewrite 1 plus x. You're going to write it as x plus 1. Now it's in y equals mx plus b form. Your m value is technically 1 over 1. Your b value is plus 1. So this does cross the y-axis at 1. And from that point, are you going up or are you going down?
You're going up.
Why are you going up? Because it's positive, right? So you're going to go up 1 over 1 and put a dot right there. Now, you don't want to leave your line that short. You want to keep going with the pattern of up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, and going backwards with that pattern to make your line long all the way throughout the whole XY plane. Anyway, is this going to be a solid line or a dotted line? Solid. So we draw a solid line right through all these dots. You don't even need a ruler if you use the pattern. And now we need to shade in either one side of the line or the other side of the line. So You could use any point you want, but the easiest point to use is what? 0, 0. Now 0, 0 is clearly below this blue line. So if it works, I shade in this below part. If it doesn't work, I shade in the top part, right? So let's test 0, 0. And you could use 0, 0 either on this slope-intercept form or even the original one, whatever you want. Let's go with the original. If you put a 0 right here and a 0 right there, it's going to say 0 minus 0. What is 0 minus 0? Yeah. So you would have 0 is greater than or equal to 1. Is that a true statement or false statement? That's false. Didn't work. So this guy did not work. So where are your answers at?
Up top.
Up top, the other side. So you shade in this side up here. Easy, right? Let's do one more and then you'll be on your own working on these. It doesn't matter what instructions they give you. If they give you an inequality and they give you an XY plane, graph it. So what do I need to do to get Y by itself on this one?
Minus 1.
Minus 1, that's right. Minus 1 here, minus 1 over there. You're going to have Y is, do I flip the inequality or keep it?
You flip it. No, keep it.
Keep it. I didn't multiply or divide by a negative, so you keep it. And you're going to have a slope of 2 with an X with a plus 4, right? And I even put the slope in blue and the Y-intercept in red. And you might as well put it over run, rise over run. So this one crosses at 4. So let's go to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. And you go up 2 over 1. So if you do go up 2 over 1, you're going to be right on the edge, which is fine. Even if you go off the graph, it's fine. But you're going to have to use that pattern backwards. Up 2 over 1, go backwards. Over 1, down 2, over 1, down 2, over 1, down 2. So you could get a fully extended line all the way throughout your whole graph. Now, is this going to be a solid line or a dotted line?
Dotted.
Dotted because there's no solid line underneath it. So it's going to be a dotted line. Put some dots between the dots. And again, we need to shade in either one side or the other side. Caden, what's the easiest point to check? 0, 0. Let's test the point 0, 0. And you could go with the original, or you could go with your modified, your slope-intercept form inequality. If you go with the original, plug in a 0 for x, plug in a 0 for y, and you're going to have 1, because 0 plus 1 is 1. 2 times 0 is 0 plus 5 is 5. So you're going to have 1 is greater than 5. 1 is greater than 5. What do you think of that? That's wrong. So is this an answer?
No.
No. Where are your answers at? The other side. So shade in the top part. It's that easy, right?
So where the wrong answer was is the opposite side?
Yeah, if it's a wrong answer, then it's the opposite side. Now let's say you would have done all this work and then you plug in 0, 0, and let's say it would say 1 is less than 5. Then yeah, it would work, so you would be shading that side in. Because if it works, it is an answer. That means that all your answers are down here. But if it doesn't work, that means it's not an answer. That means that none of these guys are answers. The other side are the answers. Cool. And that's it, guys. And that's what we're doing for the next couple of days. So let's get you guys going on the homework.